And we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening in the past, present, or future, wherever and whenever you are. Welcome to another edition of the Living World of Darkness Changeling 20th venue, where we are in Brooklyn, in the Brooklyn PD. I don't remember which precinct that Maxine worked with, or technically now Charles also works with. That was never defined. Just assume it's somewhere in Brooklyn, and it's under the jurisdiction of the Brooklyn PD of this particular precinct. We'll just have fun with that. Our scene is set in Charles's office, where he's busy making sure that the space is relatively comfortable and well kept for the first session that he's going to be having with a very unique case, one that is. It's definitely good that it's fallen into his hands and not someone else's who might have another more perceptive eye to certain aspects about their visage, so to speak. But Charles's office, to give you an idea of what's in it before Arav walks in, it's a large collection of books, not necessarily on the dry matter of like psychology and expanding the mind or like the depths of the mind. There are some of those books, but that's not the majority of it. There's actually a very eclectic collection of all sorts of things. There's a book on his table actually that deals with Victorian style, Victorian history and stuff like that. He has several different dictionaries, many books in several different languages, and in fact, the newest ones seem to be in Hindu. And actually, he has a copy of the Lord of the Rings, like the full trilogy in one big giant book, and what seems to be the Silmarillion as well. And he seems to be having a lot of notes next to it. And there's one book that he has that's prominently on display. Called that's War and Peace, but there's a bullet hole right through the middle of it. But in the meanwhile, he is making sure like the seating arrangements are set. He's not going to be sitting behind his desk when this happens. He has two chairs. And there's going to be like a small table in between them, and he's made sure like the water that he's got like ice cold water in there. He checks his watch to make sure that he's timing this just right, so everything's just so to speak.
Excellent. Rav is probably late by at least 5 minutes, possibly longer, but we'll say it's 5 to 10, just because he doesn't want to be a total asshole. He's just kind of forgetful.
Yep.
So about 5-10 minutes after the appointment time has come and gone, there is there's a little sharp rap at the door, and this big idiot pokes his head in. He's got his usual hat on, hair down, joggers. He's wearing he's got his yellow sunglasses on, and he's kind of like, as he tilts them up and back, so that they're kind of sitting on top of the beanie that he's wearing, he almost becomes more in focus a little bit. And he gives a big grin, and he's like, sorry, dude. I got totally caught up, and it's not important. And he kind of strolls in and flops down.
No worries. The appointment doesn't start without you, he says as he closes the door. Just sort of smiles that diamond-fanged smile. This cat is... I know, Kitty. I know. I know you've been feeling very needy today. I haven't given you any love at all. At all. I know you haven't had any attention. I haven't let you sit on my books. I haven't petted you or let you sit on my chest at all during this day. I know. And you have everything to complain about in the world. I know. Anyway. Charles has no cats. Anyway. So Charles gets over there and is like, obviously his guest is put in there, and goes ahead and pours some of the ice water and hands a glass to Rav.
Rob thanks him and kind of settles back and scratches a little bit at his chin and says, it's been a while since I did therapy, so you're probably going to have to talk me through the beginning of it again.
No, it's no worries. Besides, this is a preliminary setting, and because we don't have much of a chance to get to know each other, we're mostly going to be talking about, the very boring things, and at the risk of being cliche, tell me about your mother sort of deal. You don't have to talk about your mother if you don't want to. It's your session. You're going to get what you want out of it. You're going to get whatever it is you wish to put forward to get what you need out of it.
Rob is like nodding along as well as having. He says, "That sounds right."
Yeah.
As though this is like he's like checking off, like, oh, okay, yeah, that is what a therapist would say.
Yep.
Accurate.
He's like, yes, okay, cool. So we'll see how long this gets before it starts getting Silency of the Lambs here.
Silence of the goats.
Are the goats still screaming? You wanted to save them, didn't you, Rob? You wanted to save them all. You can still hear them, don't you? Okay. Anyway.
Dr. Lecter?
Anyway.
Rob definitely has the Jodie Foster impression. He for sure does.
May I see your credentials? No, anyway. Oh man, I'll have some stuff to talk about after the scene. But anyway, Charles does get down, and he gets his notebook ready, and he sits down across from Rob. So before we start your therapy session, anything you wish to discuss before we put it on the record?
I'm gonna say no. Yeah, no.
Okay. Very well. No worries. Right to it, straight to the point. He says as he clicks the timer because it's gonna be his hour. So let's begin. Let's begin with you. Where do you want to start with you?
I don't know, man. I think you kind of know the whole story, right? Went out for my birthday, partied a little too hard, got a little lucky, and a little unlucky at the same time, and here we are.
Yes, that's true. That's the police report, and we did kind of go over that, but that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is start with you. Where do you want to start with you?
Usually I like to set the mood a little bit. Some slow music. Afternoon is my preferred time. Make sure I got everything I need, Start off slow, top to bottom. And it becomes slowly apparent that he's definitely talking about how he prefers to pleasure himself in his time.
Yep. No, he's taking notes about this. He's taking notes. He's not putting any sign of embarrassment or anything like that. He's going along with it.
It's too vulgar, but he is.
Gotcha.
And with the right pressure, I can usually get myself there, pretty quick.
Very good. Well, that's fascinating. But I'm afraid that still doesn't answer. Still doesn't tell us about you. That tells you more about your proclivities for self-pleasure and satisfaction, but that doesn't tell us about you. So, where would you like to start with you?
Oh, is this like a long walks on the beach, pina coladas, getting caught in the rain kind of situation?
If that's where you feel that defines you as, that's where you can start with.
All right. The elevator pitch. Tall, goat-legged man seeking friendship or more with pretty much whoever, likes art, booze, sex, and art again, not necessarily in that order.
Well, that describes a number of preferences, productivities, a description of your height, but I don't think that tells us of who you are.
Can we ever really define who we are, man? I feel like it's sort of a subjective experience.
It's always worth to try. And besides, what we're talking about is your perspective of self. And if your perspective of self is limited to the physical and to the aspects surrounding your life, it's not usually how someone actually lives. There's always something more going on underneath that surface and the things that surround ourselves.
He thinks about it for a second, and it's not readily certain. Like, it's not really trying to talk around the question or around the answer or anything like that. It's kind of a may not have occurred to him before, sort of a thing, or maybe it has. Who knows? Maybe he's just being a shit.
You know.
And he says, I mean, the art thing is still pretty true, even, I guess, objectively. Like to have a good cry, a good fight. You know, really be present in my body. Yoga. Yoga's good for that.
Sounds like you're a very kinesthetically intelligent individual. But there is that bit of culture and experience when it comes to art. Is there something you see yourself in art?
There's aspects of it. I like the technical prowess of it and the creation of something out of nothing. I like beautiful things, all kinds of beautiful things. I appreciate mastery of a skill.
Is it just paintings, or are there other forms of art that you appreciate to such similar degrees?
Oh, everything's art a little bit, right?
He just sort of smiles.
Yeah. The way that people style themselves, the way they carry themselves, there's performance, there's music. I dabble in a little bit of everything, but painting is, I think, where my talent serves me best.
Is it the talent, or is it something more?
It's not really like a calling, I guess, if that's what you're getting at.
During my previous, during the sort of preliminary walkthrough of your home, when you were sharing some of those pieces, you got rather intense about them. Not in a bad way, but it definitely derived a lot more of passion, heart, a greater interest.
Oh, yeah. That's the looking part. The looking part is choice. And that's my collection, you know? So a little of the magic gets lost, I think, if you know how the sausage gets made, so to speak.
I see. So you much prefer looking at art rather than actually making it?
I guess so. It's like cracking the puzzle. No fun to look at a Rubik's Cube that you know how to get it. Fun part is figuring out how you twist it to get there. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I'm not great with metaphors. Writing, not really my area.
Well, that's a good thing it's mine. But I believe that is a good place, at the very least, to start. What is it that you see in the paintings when you look at them without knowing their working bits?
Sometimes it's a feeling or a moment. Sometimes it's a hope. Sometimes it reminds me of things I've experienced. Sometimes it's things I've never experienced but would like to. I don't know. It just depends on the piece. It's another subjective experience.
Tell me about your most recent one, then. Your most recent piece that you've had this experience with.
Hold on. The name of the painting. I'm trying to find it. Okay. He may not own it, but he might. We'll see. So let's see. My most recent acquisition. It's a small painting, a little bigger than the average sheet of paper. It's a bird. And he's sitting on this little box thing. It's such a real painting. It looks like it could just fly straight off the page, except this tiny, delicate little chain that's attached to the surface he's sitting on. And you know, even though it's really delicate, that if you tried to take off, it would snap and yank him right back. And there's just a lot of really great, I don't know, there's the visual metaphor of something so small being able to exert so much power over someone. There's the ultimate futility of this bird who's trapped here but looks like it could fly right off the page. The technical skill is to die for. And it's, you know, all so small that it's, you know, it's a quarter or less the size of most televisions nowadays. And there's so much packed into this tiny space. And as he's talking, he's kind of like a little bit of that like verve and light is coming back into his countenance.
Charles is using that window of opportunity to observe him. This is where I'm going to be rolling a perception psychology roll. The way it works is it's relatively similar to just a perception empathy for the most part. However, it does get a little bit more information because you're also getting an idea of the mental state of the people, and it might lead to certain insights about the person that you might not normally get on a normal perception empathy. So just as a heads up on how that was working. Wow, he got no successes on that. Your enthusiasm's too much. Jesus. Actually, no, he got one success. I forgot. Psychoanalysis, 2 successes. Yes, 1 success. So he's going to get at least a base.
Okay. Just his general mental state? Or...
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's more focused on this particular subject and stuff like that. He's trying to build a profile and get an understanding of the individual in front of him, so.
Okay. So there's that like joy, you know, the intensity that we kind of talked about a little bit last time. He's obviously like very interested in a lot of different aspects of this stuff. And he like maybe starts, you know, speaking a little bit faster and things, but it's almost possessive sort of the way he's talking about it. Like in the way that, like almost in the way that a tour guide or someone who knows the thing that they're like anyone who knows what they're talking about would give a speech of something. It's like that knowledge is theirs, right? Like there's a weird sense of ownership with it where they're the expert and they know, and he's got a little bit of that going on.
Gotcha. That'll be an interesting thread to pull. Anyway.
Yes.
So yeah, he just, for the most part, Charles just lets him talk about his thing for as long as he wants to go on. He's not.
He probably goes on for a while.
Yeah. I mean, but he just lets him because this is his time, and he's trying to get this information about him and stuff. And hey, he'll stop him if he needs to stop him, but he doesn't stop him unless Rob ultimately comes back to himself.
Okay. Well, he talks about, so he'll probably talk for a little while about this painting, and then he goes on to explain that still lifes aren't usually his thing. He's generally more interested in impressionism, where you can extrapolate all of this feeling from a few simple strokes, and like there's something about the frugality of movement but is still super evocative of all these different things. And then eventually, a little sheepishly, he like catches himself and is he sort of scratches self-consciously at his arm and says, sorry, once I get going, I have to go for a while.
No, that's fine. That is totally fine. After all, it's your hour. You're free to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
So I'd usually make somebody else come with me when I do my sales. That and and he gives a full body.
Yes, I can imagine that's a bit problematic from time to time.
Occasionally.
How have you managed so far?
Creative application of a couple of interesting trinkets that I've come by, and mostly association with people who are into some weird shit.
Charles is noticing things down. It's definite shorthand, but if Rob looks at it, he'll notice that it's changed script several times.
Okay.
Like
cursive to block print to.
No, like it was originally like print, and then it changed to kanji.
Okay.
And then there was, and then it changed to certain other writing styles. I don't know what Rob's languages are, but
probably not kanji.
Well, it's that would be I say kanji. It's Cantonese is what he's writing in, but it's just the style there.
Romance and Germanic.
Probably. So sorry, what languages did you say he knew aside from English? If he knew any?
I don't think I actually have him listed as knowing any.
Okay, gotcha. But I mean, you never know. It might be in your merits because that's usually where you buy language.
No, he doesn't have any merits.
Okay. Well, it's if Rob is being perceptive enough. I mean, I can give you a perception roll. It's not that hard if you want to figure out what exactly he's doing with his notes, because it's very clear. Aside from that, it's very clear that every so often he changes languages.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes mid-sentence.
So Rob will kind of glance if he's close enough to see. I don't think he would be like, "What you're writing?"
Yeah, exactly.
But if he saw it, he'd be like, "You that paranoid, or is this some kind of tick?"
I'm sorry.
The writing thing.
Oh no, I just like to keep in practice, and plus sometimes certain words, there's no easy way to translate them or get the meaning across without putting it in the original language it came from.
Rav actually he nods. He's like, "Yeah, I get that. That makes sense." And then he laughs a little bit and he says, "For a second there, I was thinking you were doing on some kind of full-on spy shit, and I got to tell you, man, I'm not that interesting."
Well, I wouldn't trouble you too much. There's nothing that big of a conspiracy going on, although the cat seems to disagree otherwise. The cat thinks there's a conspiracy going on. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Anyway.
Right. Cats usually are. Yes.
Yeah. So, and no, I assure you, my notes are nothing sinister. It's merely taking down things. Although certain subject matters, such as the current physical appearance, for my own personal notes, I'd rather someone doesn't look over them and pick up on that. My official reports will be in English and will omit certain details. I just have to make sure that anyone who wishes to see the original notes might not pick up on certain things.
Appreciate it.
Besides, it's client confidentiality.
Oh, that's nice. I didn't know how that worked with the whole jail thing.
Well, there's certain things I do have to tell, but aside from that, most of the information. There are certain things I do have to report. Most do not. Otherwise, what's said here stays here. It's just mostly my evaluation based on what we talk about.
Like Vegas, Ram says, and then he wags his eyebrows.
Yeah, like Vegas. Whatever we talk about, this room stays in this room. I can only give out my evaluation based on the conversations we've had.
Fair.
So, Charles sort of sits back for a moment and considers the next direction he wants to take this. Were you always interested in art before? Or gestures.
I mean, I liked it. I thought it was cool. Probably more than a lot of the other kids my age. But man, it really popped off after that, let me tell you.
Was that what triggered the chrysalis? Was it some art piece?
I
mean, he could lie. It's like, that's some personal information.
He probably, kind of laughs it off a little bit and says, more or less, see a pretty thing, have a reaction you don't expect. It happens to all of us.
Yeah, he's PNE. Oh, not PNE, P in psychology, that one. So. Oh, for the love of crap! Well, no botch, but no successes. Rob is a closed book.
His dumb satyr facade is doing him right this time.
Maybe he is as stereotypical of a satyr as I ever thought. Well, Charles will still note that, and he'll just write that down. That might be something to come back to later. How about your life before? What was that like?
Oh man, he seems not necessarily surprised, but like he just kind of wasn't expecting that question. And he's like, man, I haven't talked about that in a while. I mean, it's pretty standard, Played baseball, well, softball. Had friends, went to school, rode my bike, skinned my knees when they still face the right direction. Standard, nothing special. Middle class.
I wouldn't know what standard is.
Fair. Hand-me-downs, family dinners, saving up chore money to go to the movies on weekends, just normal kid stuff, I guess.
You mentioned hand-me-downs. I'm assuming that was older siblings, or was that cousins?
I had one big brother, but it's mostly cousins. I was somewhat unexpected, you might say.
I see. Was that something you were aware of while you were growing up, or was that something you found out about later in life?
I mean, I was aware of it kind of abstractly at that point. When you're young, you don't think about, I mean, it was a pleasant surprise. My parents always said so, but doesn't really mean anything until you're old enough to understand what that means.
Of course.
I lacked the context at the time, but it doesn't really bother me. Surprises happen all the time, and usually they are pretty good, even if they're bad.
So you find sometimes even the surprises that are bad, you can find some kind of a positive spin on them.
For example, I was surprised by getting arrested that one time, but look, I made some new friends, so win.
Well, I would like to assume that I'm your friend, at least here. Obviously, we're talking about very personal stuff about you in this place. I want you to feel that this is a place you can trust. However, I do have to maintain an air of professionalism in this area. Though, from what I've understood about friendship, those things usually are not made in the client confidentiality sort of settings such as these.
I mean, we met before. You came to my house. Well, my current house.
How old is that? How long have you been staying in that place?
6 months.
Where were you before?
I don't know any New York neighborhoods off the top of my head.
I don't know either.
Hold on just a second.
Word.
Google.
Google, save me now.
I was in another walk up down in Midtown Manhattan.
So
this is a really interesting character choice, but it's just because I don't know shit.
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's all good. If anything, we'll flesh it out as we go with this conversation. So, are you originally from Manhattan, or are you from New York?
No. He doesn't offer anything else.
Yeah. I know the records say where you're from. He says because, the police records would show something. Mm-hmm. But, well, at least you're currently, it's like, where did you grow up? Was it New York? The city itself, or the state? Somewhere else in the state?
The city. Where all the important growing up happened anyway.
So moved into the city when you were younger and had the more what's the word? Develop, yes. The most development in the city.
Yeah, that sounds right. He just grins.
Yeah. Do you still talk with your family?
No, not really.
How long has it been?
a while. You know, live different lives, fall out of touch, can't agree on anything at Christmas, that kind of thing.
When's the last time you had Christmas with them?
Oh, I don't celebrate Christmas. We were Jewish. I'm just kidding. Not canon.
Okay.
No, he's. I don't really celebrate most holidays anymore, except for the really big ones in our circles.
Hmm.
Can't help that though. The parties are just God. kind of.
Yeah. Hmm. I've only recently begun to experience them.
You were in for a treat.
First had my first Yule not too long ago.
Exciting. You get anything good?
I didn't realize at the time that you were supposed to give things, so unfortunately it was a bit of faux pas on my end, but I did get a few things. And other people got a number of other things between each other.
Good time, right? Plus, eggnog. It's just a good one all across. Mulled wine. Oh.
I believe I had the mulled wine. No one had eggnog at that particular party.
Oversight. You gotta come to my party next time. I can't promise it won't last for a few days, but I promise you'll enjoy it.
I may have to take you up on that offer. That's quite a ways away, and probably after my evaluations will be done. So at the very least, we'll be able to speak on more personal terms.
He high fives.
He does not reach up to high five him.
Fives and puts his up. He like waits 2 seconds, he's not gonna have it. He's like, all right, just high fives him. Not bothered, just okay.
Yep. Second time Charles has left him hanging.
I feel like it's gonna become a thing.
Yeah.
Eventually he'll stop expecting it and he'll just self-five himself on Charles.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with that. Too bad. Done. Complimented myself on your behalf. Unilaterally.
But that didn't answer my question of when the last time you did celebrate Christmas was.
Oh, probably math. 96-ish.
How old is, the profile would say how old Rob is now.
He just turned 35. That's the birthday he was arrested on.
Doing some quick calculations. Sorry here.
That's okay. Can I take 1 second?
Of course.
I'll be right back.
No worries.
Okay. Sorry.
So you were 14 or so was when you had your last Christmas.
Sounds right.
I would imagine that your family didn't stop.
Don't know, maybe.
Yeah, he's starting to piece some things together. He'll probably have to dig into that. He makes a note. He's not going to touch on it now. That will probably be something that he'll bring up a little bit more later. There's definitely something going on with the family beforehand. But he doesn't want to scare him off just yet. There's still a building establishing a trust situation. So he's next session will be something else. But sort of checks the time for just a moment before continuing back on. So, how did you get into the employment that you're in now? Should I say the business, since you are, I don't think you're the employable kind.
Sorry. My dog was eating too fast. I thought she was going to throw up. She's fine. He kind of gives a thoughtful scratch and says, well, that is a long story, but the short version is that I met the right people who wanted to help me elevate my talent, and here I am. Fellow art lovers who can appreciate a good bargain.
You must have seen some sort of talent in you in order to be able to pick you up and get you elevated.
Took a little while. Spent a lot of time unloading trucks when I first got to town, let me tell you. But, you know, satyrs tend to take care of their own, so wasn't any real trouble.
So you managed to find yourself the word escapes me. I know there's a particular term.
Trago.
Trago. That's it.
Trago, I'm not sure.
Regardless, we'll just pretend it was the correct pronunciation and move on.
I wouldn't call it having found one for myself, but stumbled into some folks who like to pal around together, and, you know, they were cool.
Were they the ones that gave you a greater amount of the education you needed to understand what was happening to you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was helpful.
Yeah, Charles just sort of smiles. You can kind of get some implications there. But yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was... Anyway.
Yeah, pretty much.
When they were educating you, was there anything in particular that you had, well, either you were confused about or you didn't quite agree with?
Not totally sure what you mean by that.
Well, you always had, I'm certain you went to school. Was there ever a teacher that when they provided information to you, you always felt you weren't quite certain about what they were giving you? Or you wanted clarification, or you just weren't satisfied with the answer, or you just didn't agree with it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have not always historically been super cool with a lot of rules and restrictions. And there are quite a lot of those.
Within that Trago?
Less so them and more so the sort of greater life experience that there is to be had in our similar circles.
Understandable. But let's keep our focus on that Trigo that dare. Was there anything that I don't know what else to say. Well, he's just like, he's just sort of letting that hang in there. Was there anything that, on that vein of thought, so to speak?
No, I mean, they were pretty chill. They kind of let me do whatever. Pretty free reign, which, luckily I was kind of an independent youngster. I can imagine that there are probably people who it wouldn't have worked out so well for.
Understandable. So they mostly let you to your own devices. Well, maybe not completely, but free range.
Yeah, that's the one. Free range. Nobody walking me to the bus stop.
Would you say that a great deal of would you say that kind of education was also what helped shape you into the person that you are today?
It's about the only education I have, so I'm going to say hard yes. I was not what you would call classically schooled, he says.
What do you feel was the most important thing you took out of that time with them?
I met a lot of interesting people. Learned how to meet a lot of interesting people. Friendly bunch, satyrs, for the most part. They like to be out and about, which makes me a little unique among them in that it's more difficult than most.
Charles just sort of like gives a slight glance at the legs in that one, but
Rav wiggles his dumb little goat feet.
Yes, I could imagine that is quite difficult, but not impossible. Clearly, you've managed for nearly 21 years. 20 years or so.
Going on that, yeah. Shit. He's kind of the when you don't realize how old you are.
Yeah.
And he shrugs and is like, it is what it is. Couldn't do anything about it, so it's a matter of learning to live with it or not living at all.
Very true. I just make some notes. We have about 15 minutes left. And I've asked a lot of questions. Is there anything else you wish to talk about? It's your 15 minutes.
So you and the hot parole officer not dating. Just to clarify.
Charles shakes his head. No.
Righteous. He kind of shrugs and is just like, I don't know, man. I don't usually ask a lot of questions. I tend to just sort of yes and as things go along and see where it gets me. It's always somewhere interesting.
Why a yes and lifestyle?
Yeah, it's more fun than saying no. No is just a lot of closed doors. Yes and is at the very least a window you can jiggle a latch on.
I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with a no.
Yeah,
it just depends. It just depends how you use that no. Or why
I always no. No. I just don't like giving them myself. Not that I don't like it. I just prefer to give a yes.
That free range experience.
Exactly.
And perhaps I misinformed you on what I was saying. It wasn't necessarily that you had to ask questions of me or anything like that. It's 12 minutes now. It's mainly just your opportunity to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
I'm coming up with it.
Okay.
I just need to do some Googling. So he kind of thinks for a second, and he says, it's a pretty sick modern sculpture exhibit on at the Met right now.
Is there now?
Hell yeah, man. Like, I've been trying to find someone in town who can cast quite the way these guys cast, but operations just aren't of the caliber in most places. Or if they are, they're too good and they're too busy doing their own shit. Don't have time to let me screw around. But man, some of the statements you get out of these things, I mean, like it's two globes just sitting 5 feet apart from each other, but there's this magnitude in it. And he kind of goes off again for a little while.
Yeah. Charles is once again listening, but he's trying to get more insight into him, get an idea, because this is his passion, his thing. Yeah. He's trying to figure out where this is coming from. If it is it really just part of his his Fey nature, or is there something more? And not only that, because of that, it's also trying to figure out how it is that's shaping him to be who he is. So that's really what.
As he's talking about these sculptures, and he's
apparently, I don't want to succeed these roles. Apparently, so no successes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will say, just for the sake of because I don't think he would especially try to hide it. He stops. As he's kind of winding down. He's been talking about this he's waxing poetic and he's reaching these lofty heights of this speech that he's giving, and he's sprawling back in the chair and kind of just staring up at. Looking at the ceiling sort of a thing. And he shakes his head a little bit and he says, man, what I wouldn't give to get my hands on that. Anyway, and kind of goes about his, and starts talking about another part of the exhibit,
Charles notes that down for a moment. But he doesn't interrupt him or say anything. He just lets him talk, but he does note that down. There'll definitely be something to be brought up later.
He chatters on for a bit about, the couple of the other artists in the exhibit who are good, but he doesn't like him as much for this reason or that reason or whatever. Although there is this one piece that, just kind of going on in that vein until he catches your glances at the time and settles back down and says, you like falafel?
I've only had it once, and the place I did have it was quite lovely.
You ever had it on a waffle?
Falafel on a waffle. What a fun little turn of phrase there. No, I wouldn't say I have.
There's this place right across the street from my apartment. To die for. Shithole. Totally gross. But if you have a lunch break, worth the trip.
I'll definitely keep that in mind. I think you mentioned that place to me before.
Yeah, I ran into Thumper and the Fox lady. Owns the bar.
Our Lady Amber.
That I knew it was some kind of fucking. Should have remembered it, man. I knew it was a color name. Anyway.
Yes, I still haven't gone there myself, but perhaps sometime here in the near future I will.
is pretty sweet. Probably even more sweet if your parole officer isn't there watching to see if you're drinking.
I'm certain that is the case, as after all, I'm not your parole officer.
Yeah, that might have been a mistake, he says, but he's kind of laughing about it.
Without sound, well, we still have, well, he says he looks there. No, I won't ask any more official questions on the record. Your time's up.
Sweet. He kind of like leans a little further and winks and says, anything you want to know off the record?
Charles sort of smiles, and he beams wide and he goes, anything to get your hands on that piece.
Well, I don't know about anything, he says. And then he kind of covers, like, not covers it, but he sort of skews the conversation, like the tone of his speech, and says, they're not really pro physical interaction with a lot of the exhibits, if you know what I mean.
He's gonna per psychology, and that's the one where successes start rolling in. Jesus. Okay. 2, 4, 6. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 minus 1, 6 successes.
Fuck, okay. I'm trying to figure out if there's like a better way to do it than me like just kind of picking whatever. Is there something specific you're looking for?
He's mainly trying to get a baseline. Well, he's trying to figure out the behavior, that shift. That shift there definitely meant something, and he's trying to figure out what it was. And maybe glean some deeper things, especially with the meaning of like, do anything you're willing to get your hands on. I was like, well, maybe I didn't mean anything.
I mean, he's definitely trying to like laugh that statement off a little bit, like, and taking the literal definition of getting your hands on something as a kind of like jokey way out. You know, like, they don't like you touching the paintings or whatever. But there's definitely like, I'm trying to think of how to explain it without just being like, now you know this.
Yeah.
He seems, and probably would make like a faffy comment about like thinking that it would look good as part of his collection or whatever. But when he talks about his collection, it's very like mine, like my collection.
He definitely wants that painting and will probably put it in his collection if he can.
Yeah. Like, some stuff is harder because like obviously sculptures are difficult to move depending on the size.
Yeah.
But yeah. And that was when you were in his apartment, like he had that stuff kind of like not even hung on walls necessarily, but it's just like stacked on the floor and the dresser and propped up against his bed and stuff. Like, if you could make a literal dragon pile, like a hoard pile of gold out of paintings, that's what it would be. But he loathed to actually lay on them.
No, he's starting to pick. The pieces are, despite his bare like no successes, pieces are starting to click together. And it's like okay. Yeah. So Charles just smiles very pleasantly, but at the same time, it's like
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I believe a wise satyr once said that I'm not that great at metaphors, and Sheet therapist said you should best leave the metaphors to me.
I recall that. And he seems amused.
I look forward to future conversations, Rob. I think they'll be quite interesting.
He goes for like a handshake.
Charles does actually go to shake his hand.
Sweet.
Yeah.
He's professional but enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I'm looking forward to it. And then gathers himself up to get ready to go.
Something to consider, Rob, just to... This isn't mandatory or anything like that, but for the sake of future things, if you have any other thoughts or things you want to bring up during these sessions, I always recommend writing a journal, just so you can keep your thoughts in one place. That way, if there's anything you do want to talk about or be guided through on something, you have them there on hand.
He kind of shrugs a little bit and he says, I mean, if you want me to, I'll give it a shot. I've tried it before, but like I said, writing is not really my thing.
Doesn't have to be the most sophisticated or anything along those lines. Just put what you feel like you need to talk about.
Okay.
I don't care if you put it on your... I don't care if you put it on a, a grocery list or something, as long as it's their check marks of what you want to talk about.
Okay. I'll give it a shot. It says give and take or whatever. At least this way you can report that I'm being a good sport about it.
Indeed. Have a good day, Rob.
You too, man. Falafel on waffle. Seriously, he says, and he turns and lets himself out without really any, like, he doesn't, he like slides his sunglasses back down and maybe goes a little fuzzy at the edges, but he just continues about his business, wanders on out without concern or care.
Charles, yeah. Oh, sorry. Continue if you're gonna do your final little thing.
As he goes, he greets somebody who's not Maxine or Charles by name. Like as he walks, he's like Tiffany or whatever. Like I don't know who it is. We can figure that out later. But
whatever, it's all good.
And that's his exit.
Okay. Charles closes his office and he waits for a moment before he thinks. And he takes his notes. And he turns towards a number of the books on the shelf, and he sort of taps his fingers along them before he reaches one of the an art book. And he starts.
I was gonna say he reaches an art.
He reaches an art. He finds an art book, like an art history book or something like those lines. And he opens it up and he starts turning pages. And by fortune would have it, there's that picture he was describing about that bird.
Mm-hmm.
Charles takes a good long look at it. For a satyr as free as you, it's the most delicate things that can keep you trapped. And that, I think, is where we're going to end our scene. Thank you, players, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. As I know there's been at least 2 of you watching this thing. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, in the past, present, future, wherever and whenever you are. Bye-bye.